Good morning and welcome back to Morning Express here on KTN. It is time for The Way It Is. We have a lot to discuss this morning and we're welcoming your views throughout the show. Your opinion definitely counts. At Sophia Wanuna is where to tweet as we talk about the various subjects. Tell us what you think. And joining me in studio this morning is Ndongo Githinji on my immediate left. He's a Tetu Member of Parliament. Also with us is the Ndiwa Member of Parliament, that is Agostino Neto, and Hassan Omar, Senator Mombasa County. Ambrose Weda, who's always a panelist here, resident panelist every Monday, is on his way. He'll be with us in about 10 minutes or so, so he will be joining us shortly. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
So a lot to go through this morning, and let's begin with those people who feel President Uhuru Kenyatta should now come out and pronounce himself, especially on the matter of corruption, but as pertaining Anne Waiguru, because there are people saying he's protected her. Why isn't he letting her go? Those other CSs who asked to step aside. Why isn't the same happening? Githinji, I will start with you. Should the president address the nation not only on that, but also on the state of the economy? The last time he spoke about it, he said all's okay, but his cabinet secretary, treasury, saying these are turbulent times.
Thank you, Sophie. I think the calls on the president to pronounce himself on this or that are frankly a bit premature. You remember there has been a series of narratives that have been building over the last 1 month or so, particularly from my brothers here on the other side of the political divide, that the economy has collapsed, that Kenya is broke, that Eurobond money was misappropriated, and yet the IMF comes and lays all that bare as being fabrications. They're just political machinations and political games which are designed to play on the psyche of the Kenyan public, to foment disaffection with the Jubilee administration, because the IMF was very clear that Kenya, since independence, has never defaulted on any international obligation. Kenya's international, or rather Kenya's borrowing stands at 47% of its debt ceiling. Many countries around the world, including the United States, stands at 100%. Japan stands at 200%. So Kenya at 47% is very modest and has plenty of space to grow. It's just that we manage within our means, and we say we don't want to extend ourselves that far, but we are able to meet our international obligations. The economy is fine. Cash flow management is part of any government's operations, particularly the central bank and the treasury. And this is what you're seeing with the use of the interest rate, as a tool to manage liquidity in the economy. So I would not wish to, invoke the president's comments on these matters, because things are working out as they should.
What about on corruption?
And we need to stem the political rhetoric on the economy. On corruption, is there corruption in the public service? Yes. Has there been corruption in the public service? Yes. Do we need to work harder at building or strengthening the institutions that reduce or tackle and fight corruption? Yes. But do we, after spending so much energy in first of all, in adopting a new constitution which creates fantastic institutions, whose task it is to run the government and to make sure that corruption is kept in check. After that, we then go in the streets and start throwing stones at each other and witch hunting and burning people at the stake. I don't think that's where Kenya should go. The appointing authority and the institutions concerned have vested in them the responsibility, especially the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, to investigate, bring charges, and if somebody is adversely mentioned, as was in the case of the EACC report that the President tabled in Parliament, then it is the responsibility and the duty of people to step aside. All
right, let's bring in Agostino Neto. Your thoughts on calls to have the President address himself to these issues and admit there's a problem and perhaps even take action?
I really think I listened to my colleague, Honorable Githinji. The truth of the matter is the president needs to speak to Kenyans right now and be honest about a couple of things. You know, he mentions the fact that we have institutions like the EACC that are supposed to be fighting and dealing with corruption, whereas that is true. I mean, I think what we've seen in the past couple of days is EACC that has been stifled. You do not have commissioners for the past 5-6 months, and anyone else who wants to be honest with the EACC will be ensured that all the cases that the EACC is in prosecuting now, if at all they took them to court, someone can challenge.
But isn't the Secretariat still operational?
The Secretariat is operational, but you see the validity of the commission without the commissioners is questionable. Okay. So that you can easily go to court and question the validity of the commission functioning without commissioners. And you see, this is a president's make. I mean, he ensured that the commissioners are not there. And right now, 3-4 months. Yes, and I knew you were going to come that. And I was leading into that.
How would you say that?
You know, right now,
substantiate what you just said.
Good. Good. Thank you. The thing is that the commissioners have been removed out of office for the past 3-4 months right now, thanks to a petition that the president should have honestly had. And even before the petitions of the commissioners were heard, the commissioners are out of office. The president has sat on the appointment of the commissioners for the longest possible right now. I mean, it's his duty to appoint the commissioners right now. We don't have commissioners. If he's really keen on fighting corruption, he should have ensured that commissioners are in office. They're not in office right now, and the cases are still going on. That aside, we've seen the president insist on a few cabinet secretaries step aside, and which has been very good. Charity Ngilu is at home, Davis Churchill is at home, but there's this particular one who no one looks like wants to touch. And even if at all they do not want to touch her, we're saying the principle of the rule of law is that, you know, the law should apply equally to almost everyone. That what is good for this one should also be good for the other one. If, for example, Charity Ngilu is going to go home on allegations or stepping aside on the basis of allegations, so everyone else who, on the basis of allegations, has been found that some things are wrong with her ministry, ought to go home. But in the case of Waiguru, it looks like she's going to stay put, and the president, like I said on a different set somewhere, that's that we must be very careful that you do not let people bring down the confidence people have in the government. But of course, for us in the opposition, we're happy for people not to have confidence in this particular government.
All right. So
that's your game.
Do you agree, Senator Omar, that the president should come out to address the nation on the various issues?
You know, you have to be totally out of your mind to think that this country is okay. You know, I mean, it's just immoral to argue from a point of view of trying to defend the obvious, trying to argue against common sense. I think it has nothing but say to do with the opposition. The opposition raised the red flag, as is always the work of every opposition in any democracy. And I thanks to investigative journalism, thanks to robust journalism, you finally decided to get out of bed with the executive and decided to now become a lot more critical on issues. And the people who've been running the campaign on accountability right now has been most of the scoops have been coming from mainstream media houses, which have been coming up with these types of allegations or these types of, you know, audit report queries that then continue to, you know, to be partly prosecuted before Parliament. It is a given. Yeah, some of them, because quite a number of these allegations are not yet within the corridors of Parliament. Most of them are still not yet before Parliament. And it is Parliament, when some questions were being interrogated, that people saw that there was a television for 1.7 million, that there was some female something, and all these things. So it's not. It has nothing. These are things on paper.
That was a PSA that accidentally tabled that.
Yeah. So these are things on paper. So for us, when we come onto this show, you know, really there are facts on the table.
I'm very glad that Senator Omar has on national television admitted that their strategy is trial by media. Because he said Parliament partially, but he's very happy with the media role in investigating some of these things. Mm-hmm. This is the witch hunting, you know, burning at the stake culture that CORD wants to foist on the Kenyan public. The Parliamentary Accounts Committee and Parliament's committees are charged with the oversight responsibility. The people who appear before parliamentary committees have a personal responsibility to ensure that the evidence that they present before the committees of Parliament are genuine. In this case, on the 3rd of November, last week, P.S. Mangiti appeared before the PAC and unsolicited tabled a document, which later we learned was an asset register, which had all sorts of fantastic, fantabulous allegations which in the words of General Norman Schwarzkopf can only be defined as bovine scarfology. And if you know what that means. So, you know, my brother here referring to some film or something, everything on that document was fake. And PS Mangiti admitted on the 4th of November in front of the PSC, the self-same PSC where he had presented, that that document was fake. That is a criminal offense. It behoves PS Mangiti immediately to resign, and if he doesn't resign tomorrow in Parliament, there will be calls for him to resign. On the issue of how the media presents these materials, this is the very same day on the 4th, I think on the 4th of November, the chairman of the PAC, my good brother, Honorable Nicholas Gumbo, actually put a call to the BBC correspondent and gave him this information about the asset register. And this information was then published in a tweet talking about sex stories, and then was picked up by the syndicates in the Washington Post and the New York Times. Yeah. Now, here is the rub. All that information was fake. So we are now saying that because of the role the media is playing in partially prosecuting these allegations on fake materials which have not been corroborated, which have been disowned by the author, and in fact a subsequent investigation in the Ministry of Devolution uncovered that the head of the supply chain management and his junior admitted to fabricating that document because they were under pressure. Under pressure by whom? By the PS of the Ministry of Devolution. Why? Because he was under pressure by the PAC chair. So it's a series of pressures that are culminating in fabrications which are slandering and damaging not only the ministers, but the ministry's reputation, and indeed the Jubilee administration and the head of state. And remember, I want to remind you and remind all Kenyans, there is a list and a history of fakeness that is being propagated by CORD. Jubilee is broke, IMF debunked that. Eurobond money was stolen. Agnes Odhiambo came on TV on the PAC and said that Eurobond money was taken elsewhere. The next day she came and recanted that evidence and said that was not true. The story of Mugabe and Mugabe's rant against Kenyans being corrupt, a complete fabrication and a lie. Mugabe has the highest regard for Kenyans and holds us in high esteem. So we are starting to see a narrative and the true ownership of recanted evidence, recanted information, people presenting lies and then recanting them later. I'm not sure that they're not the ones who are owners of the recanted evidence at the ICC in The Hague.
All right, and I just want to introduce our new panelist. He's managed to join us. Scooch over so that you all can sit comfortably. Ambrose Weda, who's a lawyer. Today you don't have your position here at the corner, but it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And join the conversation because we're talking about some of what has been happening in the country. Before we're talking about whether the president needs to come out and address the nation. But Agostinho, you've heard what the Member of Parliament had to say, Tetu, in terms of these are falsehoods according to where they stand. You're saying media has covered it well. There are those who don't think we've done a very good job at it. But let me ask you a direct question. Should Anne Waiguru step aside?
Myself?
Or should she be asked to step aside by the
Waiguru, if she had a conscience, should have actually stepped aside. You know, the thing about basic good manners is the fact that there have been aspersions that have been cast on your part. The best thing to do, even if you are holy, you should say, I think there's suspicion on my part, let me step aside. If at all you're not guilty, then you can bounce back, in fact, with more grace and say, you hanged me illegally or immorally, now I'm back having been vindicated. But to just stick in there like, you know, Kenya is a sovereign state. This is what I always say. This Waiguru is in office not because she has more rights than anyone else. It's because the people of Kenya have agreed that the president should lead the country with a group of people that at least he chooses. But the fact that Kenyans, I mean, I was in Machakos yesterday, there's a lot of disquiet in this country. Kenyans are saying, whatever is so special about her, let her go home. You know, she should have actually been honest, and if she's very nice to the president, she should have actually gone home on her own volition. Okay. But the Honorable Member for Tetu says very many things. You know, he says CORD is always in the business of fabrication, and CORD is even fabricated the ICC stories, which we'll get to at some point. But let me say a couple of things. Look at this particular stream on the Jubilee side. Agnes comes to, the control of budgets comes to the park, makes admissions, very interesting admissions, things that the government really did not expect to be admitted by a government officer. She's forced to recant that particular evidence.
Forced to? She lied.
Forced to recant. She lied. That she lied is another story. That's another story.
Okay, so what do you have?
Wait. Two things. You know, if you lie before Parliament, if you lie before Parliament, there is a recourse, and she knows that. She knows that. I mean, me and...
what evidence do you have to show that she was forced to recant?
I mean, I'm telling it's all perpetrated. That an officer comes Article 125 of the Constitution means that if a committee summons you, you're like before a court of law. So she knows for a fact that if she gives false evidence, that is improper, and she knows the repercussions.
She lied.
So for Jubilee to consistently look at what they've done, Professor P.S. Mangeti. They're actually forcing the gentleman to withdraw the evidence on the basis that they're not true. But we're saying right now PSC is basically doing investigation.
He perjured himself. He admitted it was his own admission. P.S. Mangeti admitted of his own volition that that information was false. He's withdrawing it. In fact, he wasn't even requested
for that
information.
So how do Kenyans know which one of you is telling the truth? One of you says false, the other one says not false. Because unless either of you have...
Let me say this, Sophia. That document was tabled unsolicited. Nobody asked him for that information. He came with it, and then, hang on, before he even recalled back the document, first he circulated it, they deliberated for a period of time, and then after a while he says, oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong information, let me withdraw it. What does that mean? If he didn't mean to circulate it in the first place, why did he have copies?
Absolutely. Why
did he have copies?
This is what we really need to let Kenyans understand. That one, you see Jubilee over the past few days they've actually turned the script. They're actually saying the person who needs to go home is Professor P.S. Mangeti.
No, he will go home.
I'm happy with the confidence that he will go home. You're leaving the person who is actually in charge and looking for the one who is less vulnerable because someone else somewhere is powerful.
He is the accounting officer.
He is the accounting officer.
He is the accounting officer.
Look, I like the way Honorable Githinji is defending. If at all the PS Mangeti is the accounting officer in this one, why is Charity Ngilu and Davis Church at home? Are they not? Don't they have accounting officers?
Your point has been made. Whether should she step aside? Should President say, you know what, step aside, let this storm, calm down, and let investigations take their course, and then we'll review at a different point?
I think honestly, this country is bigger than any of us. There is so much debris in the air, a lot of debris. So many documents have flown. We don't know which ones are true, which ones are not true. And government has been put forward as extremely corrupt. It is so bad. Earlier on, I had said in this program that we started this thing of stepping aside. We started it, innocent people went, they are still outside. We are now having
innocent according to who?
So accused people. Innocent.
Now, when I look at it, today, people stepped aside. But some of them stepped aside. Some were guilty. I think some have issues. Some stepped aside on the basis that there were allegations against them.
Yeah.
And as we go along, as a lawyer, I look at what is being put forward, and I realize maybe we went wrong. And I had said in this forum that some of these people, we need to deal with them quickly and bring them back. And then stop this thing of whenever there's an allegation in your institution, the top person goes. I was looking at myself and saying, suppose my accounting officers at Sony, the MD and the rest, they buy certain things, they buy pens at very inflated prices. I come to learn at oversight level much later. Then the first person to be told to go is Weda. Go. I think this is where Madam Waiguru has found herself. She is where she doesn't have a rough idea of what is going on in the ministry, and there are certain things which are rotten. But we had started the process, and there is so much debris. She's been bullied, and the bullying will continue unless a solution comes. So if I was in her shoes, if I was her, I would actually voluntarily step aside to allow the truth to come out. Because now what will clear her is the real truth. And I think, in my view, she is innocent. I can see it. If I look at what is being bandied around, what is there, is innocent. But the continued stay makes her look like she's guilty. She has something to hide. If I was in her shoes, if I was her advisor, I would have told her, Madam, take 90 days off, let them look at these things, and the truth shall set you free, and you'll be back about. She's a very effective minister, if you ask me.
Senator, I imagine you'd agree with the same, but you read some witch hunt, some forces out to just make sure this one person, that it has been made, the corruption was, some have said, it has been made about this one person, and also those who bring the gender issue and say that is it just because she's a woman and that we've seen other prominent women brought down?
I think this is an issue of conscience, as Weda says. You know, one of the things is, I know the facts out there. That's why I don't want to engage in the dogfight that Githinji is trying to push us into. It's the opposition. That's totally distraction. I think what they're now trying to deflate attention from certain principal actors. From Waiguru, they're saying it's Mangiti. Now you've heard him saying that Agnes Odhiambo should resign. And I think that's the murkiness of this whole situation. And I think in my assessment, there's a way in which public calling requires you that if you have to preserve the honor of that office that you hold. And I think what her continues to make this office appear dishonorable. You know, everybody's asking for questions. Everybody, in fact, here, and everybody's speaking, is that they are talking about the equal application of law. Or in terms of, if you asked certain CSs to step aside, and they are not accounting officers, it only follows that if you're investigating. And I agree with Weda. We were some of those, Murkomen, I, Senator Sang, Senator Mutula, when we were debating the presidential speech, said that this issue of stepping aside is a term that does not exist in the Constitution. That threshold that the Constitution sets is very different. But at that time, I think President Kenyatta wanted to demonstrate his commitment towards fighting corruption, and it has boomeranged on him. And I do believe that on mere allegations, sometimes there must be some certain thresholds of allegations that should warrant someone to step aside. It should not be for every type of allegation that comes through. But you see, also for Waiguru herself, there have been contradictions. Once time monies were not lost, then monies are lost. We've suspended the offices. And therefore, I think she has mucked the whole waters herself. And I think it's only prudent in this situation that she steps aside reluctantly, because I know that when you start to subject people to those low levels or thresholds of public accountabilities, but it's President Kenyatta himself who started this, who set this threshold.
With and the applause of the opposition at the time.
Pardon? With the applause of the opposition, and more particularly because we thought he was sincere. And lately it has come out that probably the opposition, like many other times, should not have stood to accolade that fight. It was just you know, a one-day wonder. So for me, in terms of conclusion, if you set a certain parameters that you want to operate from, you must make sure that everybody then conforms to that parameter. It's just not right. It's not fair, because she has contradicted herself on a myriad of things.
I mean, I'm very glad, Senator, in his own words, that President Kenyatta's fight against corruption has boomeranged on him. What does that mean? He's admitting that corruption fights back. When we fight corruption, corruption fights back.
Let me tell you, you also interrupted me several.
Let me finish.
The first time you used my comments, listen, don't interpret what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I'm not.
Stop interpreting what I'm trying to say. You know, you're being petty. He's being petty now. You know, you're looking for words to try and mark things. State your facts.
In this particular instance,
pettiness is what I don't like.
You need to ask the question, who is the accuser? Who is the accuser? In the last instance where cabinet secretaries stepped aside, there was an Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission report, preliminary report of investigations that they had been carrying out. It was historical, and there was evidence, or strong evidence, pointing to adversely mentioning or naming cabinet secretaries, not because of omissions within their ministries, but because of personal things that they had done personally. Someone had given a contract to his own company. Someone had done something irregularly, personally, not some outage within the ministry. This was the personal responsibility. The president then came to Parliament, tabled the report, and requested voluntarily that the CSs adversely mentioned voluntarily step aside.
And on that
in this case, hang on. In this case, who is the accuser?
Raila Odinga says there's an affidavit that shows her name was deleted from that
Raila
original
Odinga.
list.
He can say what he wants. He's the one who said that the government is broke, that the Yoruba money was put in some personal account. Are we going to be running this country based on what Raila Odinga says?
Let me take Ndungu on a couple of things. Let me actually use Senator Sanomar's words that the president's whatever is boomeranging on him. And that is true. When he was asking people to step aside, he did not know that it will actually be Waiguru who's going to be staring in the face to be stepping aside. So that actually is true to say that it's a boomerang on him. But now let me tell you a couple of things. The fact that Waiguru is in charge of a ministry, things have gone wrong, and you're asking her not to step aside and to stay put, I think is really unfair to Kenyans. Whether Raila is the one saying it, whether it's Hassan Omar saying it, whoever it's called saying it, the truth of the matter is, as per our office, the role that the Constitution appreciates of a role is to that brings confidence into the office and good moral character. Kenyans are saying we do not have any more confidence. You're doing a very good job in the words of weather, but we are thinking that something is going definitely wrong. Whether it's personal responsibility or not personal responsibility, look at the things that David Street and Charity Ngulu have gone on for. Those could have been previous things before the SEC investigations took place. And my Guru's things are fresh. The Kibra things are fresh. The NYS scandal is fairly very fresh. This was before the investigations. And we're saying cleaning up Kibra? And we're saying no, the theft that is being manifested, the buying the 1.7 million TV.
But that was a fake document. Why are you referring to fake documents?
Why would you be? Why would you be? Why would you be hang somebody on fake documentation? On the one side,
this is fake document.
I mean, if at all you're going to be talking about fake documentation, why don't you wait?
They were recanted by the author.
It's not about being recanted. Why don't you wait for that particular parliamentary report to be tabled, and then you relieve them of the fakeness at that particular point? But at this point, now you rely on the media.
No, but
now you're relying on the media for recanted evidence.
I mean,
really.
Let's take discussion for this.
I think stepping aside was not started by President Uhuru. You recall the hardworking Minister for Finance, David Muraria, was asked by his close friend, very close friend, President Mwai Kibaki, to step aside. He did. I remember also Moody Awori or something. Moody Awori was supposed to, but he didn't. So stepping aside did not start the other day. I know, and I've said here, that Madam Wana Guru was one of the most hardworking. And she addressed the king by actually going to Kibera and doing good work that the world saw, and they were shocked, and they were shocked Honorable Raila could not do it for 20 years with $1 billion shillings worth of CDM. So she is targeted.
So you think this is a witch hunt?
She is targeted. Some of these things are targeted. The only thing is that we are not being tactful with her. We have left her in the frying pan, so it looks like what is being alleged are justified, and therefore the opposition led by court leader and my friends here keep on harming and hurting.
So what would be tactical in this particular?
The tactical thing would have been if you say, I have 1.7 million shilling TV, please look at it. And that is why I'm saying for a period of 60 or 90 days, should have actually stepped aside and said, look at it. Look at what I've done. And actually truth will set her free, and people will see and say, oh, this is the most hardworking lady. But for now, because she's still in, that is the rallying point, where court now has something to hold rallies all over, in forests, in churches, wherever. And I'm pleading for our team to be tactful.
Yes.
I even told teachers, be tactful, otherwise you'll lose ground.
All right.
And
Sophie, if you allow me.
I'll come back to you. Let me first go to Senator.
Kabando, is he in code? Kanini Kega? Are those people in court? Alfred Ketel.
Okay.
Is it time we have
I'm just a bit. You know, I know the ordinary of those who are in court. You know, they're making it appear like the fight against graft is only a court issue. I mean, the fight against graft is everybody has looked at as internal issue.
Sorry, go ahead.
You know, I've internalized this whole this whole thing, and I think the people are saying in terms of public morality and public decorum, it is important, it is inevitable that Anne Waiguru has deflected too much attention to herself. It is important that she steps aside to allow certain processes that Weda is talking about to take place. What is so hard about that, particularly if for somebody like Weda says he is confident that she is innocent. So what you do is you step aside, let your innocence prevail, be manifested, then come in, triumphant. So I don't think there's any contradiction.
Let me just say something.
This moral, I'm kind of enjoying this kind of moral high ground that Senator Umai is claiming for court. Look, the facts are known. All Kenyans know. Senator Wetangula, what is he doing in Senate?
And we are going there shortly. Let me finish.
I'm just building my point. Let me build my point.
Yes.
My point is this: the governor of Kisumu, the governor of Bungoma, the governor of Mombasa, these are all people who have been adversely mentioned by the Auditor General and other institutions for corruption and mismanagement in their county governments. Why are they not stepping aside? Wait, we're talking about the moral principle. They are trumpeting on one individual, not even corruption generally in public sector, one individual. Let them lead by example. Let Senator Wetangula resign immediately. Let the governor of Bungoma and the governor of Kisumu, governor of Mombasa, all resign immediately.
Because
no, hang on.
I mean,
let me make his point, then you make your point.
I mean, he has no point to make. I mean, it's not fair.
If you're defeated by my point, say that. But you can't say I have no point to make. The point is that if these people are not able to support their arguments within their own house and allow these people to step aside and allow investigations, then why are they only pointing at Jubilee?
Sophia, let me just say one thing.
And yet the accuser is not the institution responsible.
One thing that Honorable Githinji ought to understand. We appreciate that Waiguru is very holy. In fact, she's less corrupt. In fact, she's not stolen a penny. That's a good argument. But we're saying 5 of our colleagues who allegedly stole, this is what is called the rule of law. Me and him are lawmakers. And the basis of the rule of law is that the law ought to apply equally across the board. We're saying 5 are out. They are not even guilty. We don't even know if Charity Ngilu stole a penny.
They've been cleared.
Whether they've been cleared, we do not know. But we're just saying you've also been adversely mentioned in the manner of your colleagues.
We need a cabinet reshuffle. We need people reinstated at this particular point, because also those ministries have not had substantial ministers for a while now.
You know, for us as CORD, the more they go into the ditch, the better for us.
You're cheering on. You're like,
we are helping them. Actually, we're supposed to be, like he says, we'll be having more rallies in the forest, more rallies in the churches. So long as they go the way they're going, I think it's going to be all
Jubilee, I can
talk
confirm,
about those
is
rallies.
Nowhere near the ditch. Jubilee is on the high road to development. That's why all the international investors, including President Obama, who led the GES summit to come to Kenya, are all flocking to Kenya. Why? Because Kenya is a shining star in Africa and in the world
I will
today.
get back
so
to that
allegation is just that.
Let's go with that.
They are the ones in the ditch.
Let me bring you in on Senator Wetangula case, because we have seen a number of people from court say this is also a witch hunt, that, you know, it's all about saving him. The prayers have been going on and quote unquote warning the IEBC from striking off his name from the voters' roll.
One thing, the dishonesty in court sometimes shocks me. Sometimes I pray for this country that we have leaders who are honest. With Senator Wetangula's problems are not from Jubilee. He went for elections, and during the process of those elections, like most of these other leaders, they bribe voters. We bribe voters, I know. You give them chaya, boda boda, nini, that's a fact. All the leaders know. Okay? So he did it, but he was caught in the act. And the Supreme Court said, look, you bribed voters. It was him who was in court, so he was caught. Now, the consequence of that is that he was supposed to be removed from the voters' roll. I think that the issue of Wetangula is nothing to do with Jubilee. They should have followed it from there. Then second, we have just looked at going back to the Supreme Court to say, no, it is, we are sorry about it, we will not repeat it, please forgive us, so that the country continues.
You can go and do that in the Supreme Court.
I also say, look.
No. You can do that to the Supreme Court. You are a lawyer. Can you go and do that?
I would advise my IBC colleagues, let us not be in a hurry to remove Wetangula's name from the register. It has political consequences, it has social consequences.
What do you mean? Because if the law says this and this has happened, the Supreme Court, highest court in the land, has, you know, ruled a certain way. So they're being careful.
Now, the Supreme Court was rather vague. They did say remove him. They were very vague and cagey.
But they found that the bribery.
They tried to find. They did not just clearly come and say, you have done this, we are removing your name from the list. Decision. So looking at it, transferring it to the IEBC will actually deny the IEBC the very little credibility they are having. It will cause unnecessary rifts in the country. Just having Wetangula's name in the we need just warning not to continue the bribe.
To be politically right, they shouldn't strike it off. But
I think they
following due process.
For the sake of Kenya, looking at the bigger picture, they should not do it.
Is that the way we should function,
Sophia, let me tell you first, before we came onto the set, you said you saw my picture with the governor, and I told you that was not possible. The reason, Githinji, my governor has issues with me is because I raised issues around the audit report, and my governor is a personal friend. When it comes to public accountability, friendships, public trust, friendships, allyships, where you go after dinner or after the fact is after office, that is not, it should never blurb your public how you transact your business in public. So therefore, on the Wetangula issue, the court contention is very simple. This matter was taken to the DPP at that point after the High Court. The DPP interrogated the file and in fact sent it to the CID. The CID brought it back, and the DPP closed the file on account that the threshold of evidence in the file cannot support a criminal proceeding. So the contention of the Code Coalition is that the law is very specific. Upon conviction of an electoral offense, you are not convicted in a civil trial. So this is a civil trial, and it's not a criminal trial. It's upon conviction in a criminal matter. So if you want to move forward, then the natural thing from this point onwards is for the file to go back to the DPP for request of further evidence, and then take Senator Wetangula through the prosecution phase. And once you've convicted him, upon that conviction is when then you can remove him. So what we are warning, or we are cautioning IEBC, is making an ad hoc or a whimsical decision that is not itself founded on law. And as Weta said, there will definitely be political consequences towards this. And so therefore, the threshold that is required in terms of what the Constitution says, and even if he was to be removed from the voter register, it is not for the current term of office that he's serving. It is for him not to run in the next election. So I think these are all things that we need to have a very careful navigation around. And our view to the IBC is that it is only upon conviction. And that's what the law says. We can refer to the law, it's upon conviction, and not simply on account of what do you call this, of a report that emanates from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, in fact, the High Court, in its initial ruling, indicated that it is for them, it is for the DPP or the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to order an investigation on those issues.
There is no end to Court's eternal political gymnastics and somersaults and backflips and flip-flops. Senator Ouma started very well by saying your personal relationships and friendships should not blur your responsibility to public accountability. And he's a lawyer. And then he can come here and tell us that Senator Wetangula's case must be handled in a way that is contrary to the law. The law is very clear. Chapter 5 of the Constitution, the Electoral Elections Act, 87(1), when somebody has electoral offenses and they are caught in the elections court, Senator Wetangula himself took that case to the elections court in Bungoma. He lost. He then, because he was going to lose his seat, he then took a case to the High Court. Because the Electoral Elections Act says that no action can be taken against you until conclusion of any cases or appeals. So because the appeal was in the High Court, nothing could happen to Senator Wetangula. So he was buying time. The High Court returned a verdict saying, upholding the verdict of the elections court in Bungoma, saying that there were electoral offenses and therefore he should not have his seat. He then ran immediately to the Court of Appeal, again buying time, because the Elections Act says that nothing can happen to you while there's an appeal in process. The Court of Appeal returned a verdict upholding the elections court in Bungoma. He then ran to the Supreme Court, again buying time. This is 4 years down the line. That was 2013, now we're in 2015. 2 years. Now, the Supreme Court has then upheld the verdict of the elections court in Bungoma.
It's a criminal.
Let me finish.
Liable.
The then consequent actions are, and this is what the law says, that the elections court must notify the Speaker of the Senate, it must notify the IEBC, and must cause the same to be published in the Kenya Gazette. The Speaker of the Senate has already published in the Kenya Gazette.
Right.
That is fact today. The next consequential action is that the IEBC, by law, must remove his name from the voter register. There is even a private petition by a voter in Bungoma, I think he's called Mukubwa, who has petitioned the IEBC directly as a voter, as a Kenyan, as per law, that they must now remove his name from the voter register according to the law and according to the case that was filed.
And Weta says
now they're coming to say,
needs to tread carefully.
What careful? It's the law. Are we saying that there's a selective application of the law? If that's the case, then we have two countries.
All right.
We have two countries.
One thing that, and I'm happy, I doubt that Ndungu Githinji is a lawyer.
You doubt? I'm telling you, I'm not.
You're not, and I'm happy about that. Senator Omar says something that I'd like you to understand and appreciate. First of all, it's never possible to say that the law is very clear. And if at all the law is clear on any particular case, you'll never have both sides arguing for the same case. Now, what it says is the fact that in Senator Wetangula's case, for you to be struck off the voters register, it ought to be a conviction on a criminal offense. And you know, actually one of the laws that is undergoing review right now in the Elections Act, which is coming before us, and I am sitting in that particular committee, is whether the IEBC out of its own volition can strike a member or a voter out of the register.
But you understand? Petition to do so.
I mean, just wait. If IEBC of its, you know, okay, good mannerliness says that you let me prosecute my point as well. But what we're saying is, if you let IEBC, for example, proceed in the manner it wants to proceed in Senator Wetangula's case, that will be for only other voter. I mean, IEBC can, out of its own volition, say, I have gotten a petition, you've not been convicted of a criminal offense, we are striking you off the voter register. That is going to have ramifications for not just Senator Wetangula, but for any other person in the future. And given what IEBC has been in the past, and could be in the future, it is then possible for them to say the regulations against the member of parliament for Ndio, for example, on criminal offenses that are voter related, and then we'll strike you off the register. That is not proper and fair. So we're saying in the Senator Wetangula's case, we could look guilty in the eyes of Jubilee, but let due process take its course. Let him be charged and convicted of a criminal offense, and then which is of an electoral nature. You know, you must understand the due process of the law. The fact that and you know, Senator Amar explained to you very well.
Don't send me. I know that I'm a lawmaker. I know that you process of the law. What is explained to you? What is explained is this: that even if Senator Wetangula were to be struck off the voters register right now, it still serves his full term until the next election. It happens that now it will not affect him anything right now. That is not true.
So we will wait for due process. The matters are in court, and we'll see what action IEBC will take. Let's move on to the Wairia proposed impeachment, which has since the committee said there's no grounds to impeach him. But there have been reports that some senators were not too happy with the decision of that committee. Talk to us, Senator, and I'll come to you.
I was one of those senators.
Yes.
Why do I say that? I think there's no specific threshold that has been set up in the Constitution. The Constitution even says the mere belief of a commission of a crime, you know, can itself lead to an impeachment. I personally am a friend to Wairia. We were from the same alumni of Moi University, and he's my age mate, he's within the same age bracket. So for many of us, we were anxious of the fact that Wairia should face some kind of a very transparent and judicious process. If you read the report of the committee, 13 times they acknowledge that there were breaches in law, but say it does not meet the threshold for impeachment. 13 times, 1, 2, 3, 13 times. So for me, if you are a serial breacher of law, 13 separate occasions.
Was a breach of law by him? Or
yes, by him, but you know, on those allegations.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, some of these things are political responsibility. Yes. A governor like a CS doesn't sign to any document. It is a question that you're the chief executive of that office, and therefore some of the volumes of contracts are such that I do not believe will escape the scrutiny of a governor. I do not believe anywhere in this country will an award of 240 million be done in any county where a governor is not conscious of the fact that there has been an award to that effect. So for us, our argument is we will come back to the National Assembly and the Senate to amend that clause where it says that the committee's report shall be final. We will so that like every report of every committee, it must be like Section 33 of the County Government Act and our Standing Order 68. Like every committee of any committee, we must be able to speak to it as a plenary or as a Senate.
This committee was compromised?
No, I don't think it was compromised. It's just that I found in my assessment, like assessment of quite a number of other senators, is that there was a contradiction for you to find 13 separate occasions of breaches of law and say that it does not meet the threshold of the Constitution on several, and make then recommendations: go do this, go do that, go repair this, go repair that.
I think the Senate is now timid. After they overly went against the governors out of jealousy and whatever, then I think they have gone to the extreme of timidity. Now they are overly protective of the governors. Although I know most of these governors, after their terms, they will be answering not guilty because they have done heinous crimes against the law on matters of doing these things. If you take somebody like Wairia, those who are committing those crimes are his officers. Unlike a cabinet secretary who finds officers, most of these ministers are theirs, chief officers. But they are working for them as they fleece the counties. So the Senate that we would have relied on, also especially when there are 8 of them and you are dealing with a governor who controls billions, then you can see the basis of the timidity. They're timid. They need to look at. I looked at a few instances of Waria's allegations against Waria, and I think these are some of the cases where you get somebody by the neck and you toss out. Then the country knows that we are not joking.
All right.
Absolutely.
Do you think
I
the
agree
law
with you on
should
that
be
one.
changed, amended as Senator
I agree with him on that one.
the entire Senate have a say, not just the committee?
Well, I think you know, the teething problems that we're experiencing post implementation of the new constitution are now becoming manifest. There's a lot of gaps in devolution. In fact, I think there's no Kenyan who cannot lament that corruption has been devolved, and that many of the county governments that we have, as my brother Weda says here, are fleecing the public and fleecing the public coffers. And the question is the onus on the Senate to do better oversight and you know, hold the governors to account, or is it the county assembly? So these gaps that are appearing, you know, as to whose responsibility is to take the drastic action, because at the county assembly level, we know many of the MCAs are being pocketed by the governors,
right.
So they cannot fight, you know, do the oversight role proficiently. Then the senators are left, you know, waiting for, you know, information to be upstreamed to them so that they can take action, but no information is forthcoming. So I sympathize with them. But at the same time, even the Senate must take the bull by the horns, because we're looking up to them. We're relying on them because it's only them who has the mandate to really crack down on the governor. So whatever mechanisms that they need to implement and to enforce, and if it means changing the law, I think we would support you in that respect if it gives them more teeth to be able to deal with our errant governors, because it is a fact that many of our county governments are in trouble with corruption.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes to go. I wanted you to comment on the teachers' pay ruling. Do you think that decision by the Court of Appeal vindicated the government on that question of the teachers' pay?
I really think that on the Court of Appeal decision on the teacher's salary was really unfair. I mean, those of us and Weda will, I'm sure, is going to disagree shortly, because he always disagrees on pay issues. You know, you at law school, you're told that, you know, that law is as long as the judge's foot. And, you know, the reason why they say that is that, you know, half the time, a judge or the person who is making the decision ought to look at the circumstances. You also ought to have a human face. You know, you also ought to be feeling with the victim, so that, yes, it's true that the law could be saying too many things, but you also need to look at what is the case before me, so that the decisions that I make... But
they were saying they'd have earned higher than other public servants. So
no, I mean, I really think that, look, 2 things. One, the truth of the matter is that teachers are not being fairly compensated in terms of the work they do. The pay is not sufficient.
So they should earn higher than the others.
I mean, Weda is going to tell us about Burundi, Rwanda, those ones who earn very, very, very much more than Kenyan teachers. But that is not true. I mean, the Kenyan teacher is not being properly paid according to other public sector salaries. So 2 things can happen in this country. One, the Salary and Remuneration Commissions, which the appeal court then gave credence to, ought to regulate all the public sector salaries in a manner that is in accordance, so that at least those of us who earn higher can be brought down, those who earn lower salaries are then fairly regulated. In that kind of context, then you can then agree with the Court of Appeal decision. But for them to sit on the teacher's salary when some people are still earning skyrocketing salaries and the SRC has failed in its role, I don't think it was completely unfair.
I think the country cannot afford that salary. That's a fact. Take it to the bank and you'll find the bank says correct. Secondly, we cannot turn this country to a salary nation where all we earn is pay salaries. We will, even after 30 years, we'll have achieved nothing. Thirdly, the decision was correct. After the 2010 constitution, public service salaries are to be regulated by SRC. Somehow, NAT and COPED, through threats and coercion, obtained these agreements. I said here, and I keep on warning, that coercion going forward will not work. Even if they were to go on strike again, I said they lost tact. When they went on strike, they lost tact, and they should regain tact. If it continues, I see this country the country employing teachers on contract. Those who are working in the private sector and much less than those who are working in the public.
All right. So
Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, senior counsel for the at that time for the teachers, said that that bench was tailor-made to deliver a ruling for on behalf of the state, and he actually pulled himself out. And you hear them, you hear the murmurs actually within the corridors of justice about the lack of independence, particularly at the Court of Appeal, its patronage. In fact, right now the gap we have in the judicial chain is the Court of Appeal. You'll get very robust judgments from the very progressive judgments from the High Court, but at the Court of Appeal level, you can see, in fact, if you look at it, there's a litany of conservative judges, and therefore I think we needed to be very progressive even in terms of protecting existing rights and obligations emanating from the old constitution, which are preserved within the context of the new constitution. That you cannot adversely affect, somebody in a manner as to say that the new constitution eroded a certain benefit, and that's what the new constitution attempts to do. So I think it was tailor-made, and for that matter, they also brought a suit that fits the government's logic. In fact, they were arguing like they were government bureaucrats themselves. The same way we said these guys had no material, the trial judge had no material information on economics. These ones appear to have more information about economics. You will think somebody else wrote it for them. So I think it's just concerning that every institution in this country has been eroded.
Okay, finally.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical. I mean, if you win, you laud justice and legal system. When you lose, you cry foul and corruption. I mean, that's the country we have. Unfortunately, we're so politicized even in our thinking that we cannot see the wood for the trees. The reality is this, that the government was vindicated by the Court of Appeal. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission's role, as per enshrined in the Constitution, was upheld. When members of Parliament's salaries were cut by the SRC, we made a lot of noise. Everybody had an opinion, but ultimately we had to respect the constitutional mandate of the SRC.
Okay.
Why not teachers? Why is the opposition, which was trumpeting this issue about the teacher salary and the High Court ruling, now not respecting the Court of Appeal? I think that is double speak. It's unfair, and we need to be serious about it.
Okay, we forgot about our signatures today. Court is presenting signatures this morning. We are first going to the IEBC to present the signatures. Then we'll have a rally at Masina Muliro Gardens and grounds in Madare.
In Madare, and we'll definitely cover that, so we'll have more details and continue discussing it in the various
signatures better than the asset register and the documents which Coach has been propagating recently, because we have a lot of fakeness going around. So.
All right, Ndongo Gidenji.
That's why the IBC has 3 months to validate.
Ndongo Gidenji is the Tete Member of Parliament, Agostino Neto, the Member of Parliament, Ambrose Wada, who's a lawyer, Hassan Omar, Senator Mombasa County, with us this morning on The Way It Is, and that's how they see it on the various issues. Thank you so much for joining us. Our time is up. We must go. So Morning Express wraps there. In the next few minutes, I'll be back with News Hour. Please join us for that as well.